Steve, what was that logo on your quarter zip tonight?
That is
Because
Grand Canyon University.
we probably
The
should let
Grand
Pav see
Canyon.
that.
No, but we saw Pavin getting it, so I don't feel bad
Okay.
about it. Well, I do. I do feel a little bad about it because I would never ever buy an opponent's clothing at the venue where they played Penn State, especially after Penn State
Hmm.
lost. But we're traveling, and my wife wouldn't let me bring along the piece of clothing that I wanted to bring that I thought was going to keep me warm.
Okay.
And after I gave her stuff about that, she decided that she would buy this for me.
Okay.
So there you go.
That's fair. Just
More than you wanted to know. I'm sorry.
no, that's good. I just want to. If Mark Pavlik is watching, I just or listening, which I know he might or might not do. Some friend time. Still love you, Pav. Still our favorite.
Oh, yes, friend of the show. Love you very
We need to
much.
get you on the. We need to
Glad
get
to
you
see
on
you
this
in
podcast
person.
soon.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, no, this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve. Um, yeah, Steve's on a little trip, so I appreciate him working me into the schedule. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I'm
Steve's
sorry.
doing
I'm
a
a little
little.
late in doing this. My bad.
No,
No. Wouldn't miss this no matter where
I
I am.
know,
So there you
I
go.
know. Yeah, I said we could skip, and you're like, no, it's a busy week, and we got to talk about things. And I, even though I said we can skip, I agree with you. Yeah, we've got we've got quite a bit to talk about. We've got some stadium stuff. We've got wrestling. We want to talk about a little hockey. I do have an old guy, young guy, and it's related to travel. So I think it will be,
Nice.
I think it will be fitting for your week. Um, yeah, where to start? I think the big news of the week is, of course, that uh, Beaver Stadium's field has a name. It is now called West Shore Home Field at Beaver Stadium. Um, I want to let's dive into the business aspect. Then we can get to the other aspects, which I just was very annoyed by. At some point, I think hopefully that's okay, or that's where my head's at on this one today. Um, from a fundamental standpoint, I think it was very funny. The morning that they were set to announce this, someone went back and found one of our tweets that talked about when they were or us talking about this back in May, that there was a high probability that when they released that proposal to set up the renovation towards the stadium, there was a line in there, and somebody kind of rebumped that, and we had been talking about it. For those that have been paying attention, I don't think this comes as any surprise whatsoever for a multitude of reasons, for just the mo of the Pat Kraft era as athletic director, the time that we're presently in, and NIL need to get money wherever we can get money type landscaping in college sports. And I think it's also, you look around the country, as they showed in the board of trustees meeting on Monday morning. It's just a fact of life. Ohio State has one. Washington has one. Most other schools either are getting one or having one as a very easy. I don't think revenue driver is the right term to say here, because that's not necessarily what this is per se. Even though I guess it is revenue, it's money going towards the stadium, which I guess is revenue coming in, money coming in. Um, but I think in so many ways, like, the only thing that necessarily like surprised me was just like it kind of was a pretty poorly kept secret that, like, when I had tweeted out the odds that I thought it was going to be West Shore Home Field, like 4 people reached out and were like, "Yep, you got it. Like, that's it." And like a bunch of other places and people had it first. Like, usually these secrets are pretty well locked down. So I think that was from that standpoint the main big takeaway. And I think, yeah, you shouldn't be surprised if you've been paying attention.
Yeah, it would have been malpractice if they'd have gone through another season without something on the field. Realistically, we talked last season about how there's probably wouldn't be a surprise if there's a logo on the field now that they've permitted it. If they'd have gone through a second season without it, yeah, it would have been it would have been malpractice, right? You had to find somebody to do it, and I don't had to find out. It's great that it's an alum. It's great that it's a company in the state. It's apparently about the numbers it should be. I mean, it feels light to me, but maybe that's apparently from what people I've talked to and heard from. It's about right in terms of what they should be getting. Um, and they're paying for 2 logos on the field and for Chris Peterson and athletics to write a lot more words in every one of their releases and to reformat their releases to include that on the releases. Because again, and we'll get to this. I guess we're going there maybe a little bit. Nobody's going to exactly say this whole thing
Right.
every time they reference it, but good for them for doing what they do, Penn State for getting it done, and good for the alum for stepping in and taking an element, right? It's like being the official car carrier, the official fast food restaurant, the official whatever. They've now checked the box on a category, and they can move forward, although there was a lot of not moving forward after this came out.
Yeah, I think in particular the monetary aspect, which is $50 million over 10 years. Ben Jones reported that it's kind of two deals. It's one deal more so up front, and then a back half loaded deal for the second half of the term, or the latter 2/3 of the term. I just think in so many ways it's not surprising. I think the other aspect with it is like the number that Penn State seemingly got for it. A lot of people are up in arms, and we'll get into this because I think this is important. And I think the media dropped the ball on this a lot. I saw a lot of headlines, and I was very disappointed in the number of headlines that I saw, not explaining the difference between what it actually is and what it was purported as. A lot of places had it as a Beaver Stadium naming rights deal. That's not what this was. This is a field naming rights deal. That is why Penn State got significantly, quote unquote, less money or less money than they probably could have if they had just let somebody take the name over for the place. And I don't think that's ever happening. And I think you look at Neyland Stadium, you look at Ohio Stadium at Ohio State, these stadiums that have kind of already undergone these transitions, they've done it this way because there's something meaningful to having that name there. And so like, I don't 100% like, I trust the numbers that were presented on the call on Monday, but I think it would be nice to get a few more. But I think ultimately, I believe that this is a very good deal in terms of the amount of money that they got for this. And I agree with you. Like, and that's a part of what I'm fired up about is it's good for somebody to pony up. Like, I think it's an odd business decision. I would like to understand as somebody that works in marketing and understands return on investment, and it really looks at it through that lens. And yes, we can model things out. We've got all of these models and all of your companies with your Taco Bell ads and things like that. Like, those aren't necessarily selling tacos right away, but they're helping raise the number of people thinking about Taco Bell. And then I'm thinking about Taco Bell. I went to McDonald's before this podcast. I don't know that I necessarily see the logic there, but good for somebody to pony up, quite literally, and spend the dough.
Yeah, and it's worth. Initially I thought the number was low, but after talking to people, apparently that's the annual number. If you do this math, I thought 50 over 15 is about what people have been getting. That's fine, and if it's worth it to the person who wants and the company wants to support it, then it's worth it. And I think that's great. I don't think it's any surprise it's done, and I'm glad it happened, right? And I think the people that are complaining about it, the people who are complaining about it and don't understand what it is, hopefully figure it out. Not a stadium renaming. The people who are angry about it not being named something else or for someone else, different discussion, which maybe we'll get to. But I guess, you could have just gone ahead and raised money to name that if you wanted to, or seen if people wanted to do it. And I don't believe it's an affront to Coach Paterno or his legacy by doing this. His name's on the library where it belongs, and let's play football.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair way to say that. And I'm going to regurgitate all of that in my now angry-ish rant.
Cool. Here we go. I can't wait. Here comes
Here's what
angry Darian
frustrated me. 14 years now since the scandal, 14-ish seasons now that Joe's not been the head coach, which means that the freshmen on the football team were 4 years old when Joe Paterno was the coach, or 1/4 of the population at Penn State was 4 years old when Joe Paterno was the football coach. And I think a lot of people have struggled with it and struggle with it. And I think this maybe reopened some of those wounds of struggling with it, of how to kind of reconcile with the entire situation and how everything went prior to 2011 and then 2011 on. And what frustrated me in a lot of different facets where it continuously frustrates me about Anthony Lubrano and Barry Ferncheck and some of the other names that were speaking during that is I take immense pride in the fact that I have a Penn State degree. I take immense pride that Penn State gave me a sense of community. And yes, I'm still paying student loans. And if we weren't paying student loans, I would find a way to donate more money to Penn State because I think it's a beautiful institution and it's a beautiful thing. And what frustrates me is these people holding back, quote unquote, holding back their money, millions and millions, as they said. 260 million was a number I believe Ted Brown threw out there for relatively selfish reasons. And I think what frustrates me the most is I found this sense of community at Penn State, found Steve at Penn State, found my wife at Penn State, I found all of my friends at Penn State. And that is one story in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people that have went through and gone through Penn State. And to watch them be selfish and not want to support Penn State for all of these reasons, right or wrong, it just really bothers me. It does not sit right with me and did not sit right with me. And that's why I was so angry when I wrote the other night or on Monday night, because it is not about the name on the back of the jersey. It's the name on the front of the jersey. And it's just, it was frustrating to kind of sit there and watch that. And I had some issues with some of the language used towards Pat Kraft. I'm not his biggest fan. I really am not. I think that's no secret if you listen to this podcast. But some of the comparisons that were made, whether it was evoking Judas or FDR and the language that FDR might have used, like it was bizarre and a little bit embarrassing. And you know, the only person that voted no that I can kind of agree with their logic on was Brandon Short of, you know, I understand we're frustrated by this. I understand there's ways we can do this, but maybe we should take a look at more in all of our options and kind of also understood that there was something bigger going on there. So that's my angry rant, I guess would be the best way to say that.
That was pretty measured. That was good. I think I don't know that I've heard you being not a fan of Pat Kraft. I think we've talked about, you know, things he could or could not do better. I thought I was more that, but I think he's doing a great job. I think exactly what you said overall. The place is bigger than one person. And for me, from my Penn State experience and what I was sold during my lifetime and before being a student, as an employee, I was sold that an education matters. And what I was always told about Coach Paterno said, libraries where my name belongs. This is what we're most important about. So if that's what they believed, if that's where they invested their money and gave to, you know, the university, much more so than they gave to athletics, who am I to doubt that what the man and his wife said at the time? And I don't think we lose anything in terms of legacy for him or whatever else. I don't think they're doing a disservice. I think, I don't know, it feels misguided to me. But I'm glad there's a name on it, and I'm not disappointed that that's not his name. If they wanted to raise money for that, I'm sorry they didn't, or something to communicate, or whatever else. But I think you're right. I think it's about the place being bigger than one person, and some people in this argument and discussion afterwards sounded, I don't know, a little petty.
Yeah, I think that's. I don't think it was a little petty. I think it was very petty, and it was frustrating to watch. Sorry to Pat Kraft. That was mean to Pat Kraft. There's certain things I don't agree with, but there are some things that he's done that I do appreciate and enjoy. At least I didn't compare him to other figures. I don't know. I was just really disheartened.
So does it this situation? We do a lot of stuff, old guy, young guy. Did this break? This feels like it breaks down generationally. Like the social media stuff that I saw in reaction to the people who were complaining was very much, hey, stop it, take your ball and go home, please be quiet. And they didn't say it as politely as that. Is that fair? Are you sensing generationally or not? I don't know. Or is it just people are tired of some of the negativity?
I guess I think it's to both. I think it's funny, interesting, to watch Matt McGloin say one thing and then watch Michael Motti tweet another thing. And I think that's very interesting because they are relatively my age. Like we were on camp, all three of us were on campus together. I said hi to Matt McGloin one time at the Big O or whatever it's called there in Pollock. I sense it is a generational thing in that it's. I think it is. I mean, I really think it is. I think for people that are younger than me, for sure, like their Penn State experience and their Penn State culture is rooted, ingrained in everything that's kind of like everything that we tend to talk about, like the lenses that you and I tend to speak through, the lens that I speak through, usually of like 2012 on, and like yes, like the first decade of the 2000s, but like that was important, but some of that was more about the players and the those types of people. I think it's also a political issue. I think you heard it in Anthony Lubrano's reference of Doge, in the era of Doge, which he said a few times. I think in general, the state or people in the state that are more conservative definitely lean towards supporting and making the name should have been Paterno Field. And so I think it's a lot of factors. I think generational is the biggest, but I think there's a political factor, and I was thinking about that in particular. I mean, even Trump himself has brought up and said, you know, what was in the 2016 election? He was like, "Whatever happened to Joe Paterno? We should bring him back," or something like that. Like it was very, I don't know, it was very weird. So yes, to answer your question.
Okay, just curious.
Do you agree?
That's the way I sense it too.
Yeah.
No, I sense it too. I think people younger than me are just ready to move on, right? Like they don't know the fight. I think they respect the history, but they don't. Maybe they don't understand, but I don't think they don't care. I just think they might understand the business. I don't know if they understand the business and stuff more, but like, hey, this is the business of college sports now. This is the atmosphere. This is how it works, and it's good that if you want Penn State to win, that they're doing these kinds of things. And I don't think it means any disrespect to the memory of, because again, as someone in my age, in my late 50s, wow, the name belongs on the library where it was. That's what I was sold. That's what I was told. And we had Jay on, and he kind of danced around the question a little bit when we talked about it. But I don't think you're diminishing any legacy. It's a 100-yard piece of turf where a person's impact is much more than what happened on there, even though I understand it's a football team. And I think we just get mired in this cultish hero worship stuff. And he was just much more than that. And I think a naming of a field doesn't tarnish that at all. And I'm glad it's happening, and waiting to see what athletics does next. I'm waiting for them. Really, if someone regurgitated your tweet about from last May, what they need to pin back now is, okay, we need, when they do the renovation, we need gates on the west side from Sheets and gates on the east side from Wawa. Like that feels like a no-brainer to me.
You want them to just go all out. You want corporate everything.
Well, but you could have because they're not going to.
It's free money. It is free money.
They're not going to be the only food purveyors in the place, right? Because they're now, that diversity matters. But gosh, why wouldn't you try to pitch a Wawa and a Sheets Gate on the west side and the east side? Like it just makes so much sense.
I think it's a great idea too. I really do. But I don't know. I think
Rudders is upset and wants to get part of it. They can do the Rudders fan zone outside somewhere, right? Like we can get them all involved.
We'll put
somehow.
Rudders on the other, down in the BJC, one of the BJC entrances.
Okay. As long as we get them all, we get them all an opportunity.
I am. I think the other thing, and you alluded to it. Nobody is going. And again, apologies to the West Shore home crew who is marketing this, and I was actually very surprised at the number of people that didn't even know who or what West Shore Home is, or understand why it's called West Shore Home, among other things. But I just no one is going to call it that. Quite literally, aside from anyone in athletics, and it's going to be in the press releases, and it's going to probably be some logos and things you see around the stadium, little things like that, and that's about it.
But Steve Jones is going to do it in every broadcast, full and out, right?
Right.
So that's a read for them on every broadcast. at however many breaks before the game,
Right.
setting the start, not at every break, but start of the game, start of the second, whenever they're there, he's going to wrap. They're going to get their name mentioned across the state on those things. So it's going to be worth it in terms of mention. It's already probably worth it in awareness in the past couple days.
I would love to know their web traffic over the last 72 hours.
Right.
Like what was last Monday compared to this Monday.
And some college student from the Collegiate or Onward State's going to do a joking, hey, here's what else we can sell, whatever else, and here's West Shore home field already. It's in a story there that was never going to be before that. So I think it's a win all the way around.
We did put in an offer. We offered to pay for 5 chicken baskets per game. We were told no, that's not substantial enough. We tried. SSWS.
We're going to work on our grant writing and our proposal writing.
This is no more. If you would like to support SSWS Field, again, you can. The bookshelves are up for naming rights. Each one still's got a naming rights.
That'd be great. We could put we get logos in the name. That's great.
We'll get logos. Yeah, we can. Okay. Have we beat the field thing into submission enough?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I got all my thoughts out there.
Except for the people that are still disagreeing are wrong.
Well, yeah.
That's
there you go.
Okay.
That sums it up. Do you want to go? Let's go to wrestling first. Here's my wrestling take from the weekend. It's more wrestling-ish than I am. For as much as we have said that it is Penn State wrestling's world, and we're just living in it. It is Gable Stevenson's world, and we are just living in it. He is.
That's the truth.
Like he made Greg look silly. Like you could tell he's an Olympic champion, and the other guy was not in that match. And I think that was my one-ish takeaway. My other takeaway then was the Carter match was a little too close for comfort for me. And I think a lot of people had prognosticated that I forget what his last name is. I know his first name is Max. He was going to kind of take care of business or could be a threat to Carter, and sure enough, he was. And I thought that was interesting. All in all, I think, to your point though, I think a relatively noteless weekend for Penn State.
Yeah, I think the thing that I took away from it was, well, the Josh Barr injury is probably a concern. I mean, I don't think it's a national championship ending concern, but it certainly doesn't help, depending on what he can or can't do. And for me, it was a bigger than Penn State thing, and maybe I missed this for a year, but for so long, college wrestling and pro wrestling did not get along. Like, Kurt Angle wins a national championship. When he would want to come back to events, it was almost like, oh, Kurt's in here. I don't know if we can really acknowledge these here. Now we're giving out belts for Big Ten titles, right? Like, it's funny how the world changes. Like, 10 years ago, the wrestling purists would be like, no, you couldn't possibly do that. But now, there they are.
I had this written down because I wanted to ask your opinion on it, because I knew you would be fired up in some shape or fashion.
Oh, I'm not fired. To me, it's interesting. I mean, it's almost funny how persona non grata Kurt Angle was to some purists when he would come back during his pro wrestling career and be around events or even think about being at an event. And probably didn't happen a lot because he was busy with his stuff, but it was almost like, oh, well, he went pro wrestling route. He's not really a wrestler anymore. And here we are now in 2025 handing out belts to everybody, who's a champ. And because they're cool, right? Because people see him and know they mean you won. So I think that's interesting. And that Penn State grabbed 5 of them. Good for them. And I think they're marching towards nationals in good position.
It's much better than any stinking trophy that they would get.
Certainly, it's so much better than, look, I appreciate and really respect the tradition of holding up the bracket, right? And you're standing there with the medal around your neck and you have the bracket. That's cool. But I'll tell you what, I bet you every one of those wrestlers would say, well, I don't need to hold the bracket if I can sling that belt over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Right?
The belts were really cool. It's so funny you read that, or you had that, because I wrote that down. I wanted to ask you about it. I wonder, and I was thinking about this then, because one of the reasons I wanted to ask you about this is Carter then goes and has a little bit of an interesting press conference after that match. And I've been thinking about, like, I think one of the things that's most interesting to me about college wrestling in particular, and I think probably to a lot of people, is like more so than any other college sport right now, we are seeing a lot of personality from these athletes. You can debate the merits of like if you enjoy that and if you like that or not, but I think like I applaud the Big Ten for kind of leaning into it with the belts, because like that kind of goes with that flow, if you will. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was that was actually probably the true highlight of a relatively not boring, but as you put it, Penn State Invitational, and it was cool. I liked it.
Yeah, I think the personality piece is interesting and good for them and a wise decision because it is an individual sport. A team's going to win a national championship. Individuals are going to win a national championship. And what draws what has worked for UFC and the WWE, and now we're in the name NIL era for all college sports is personalities, right? So go ahead and as long as it's not too crazy, and I don't know that you can reel it in, but go ahead and let them show who they are, right? Let them talk a little bit because they've tried everything else in terms of college wrestling to broaden their fan base. And nothing's, I mean, they're out there more now than ever, but I think the core is still the core. And growing beyond that isn't really far. Maybe you do it with some personalities and some interest. And, you get some interesting stuff along the way. Then you get some false starts along the way, like the Starachi, Gabe Arnold thing that just has been going on forever. And I'm not sure they'll ever wrestle. And not that they need to, but right, like that's the kind of silliness you do get because the media buys into that stuff too and starts trying to sell it. But no, I thought it was good for Penn State and good for the sport. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Nationals in Philadelphia should be a lot of fun, and especially for Penn State wrestling fans.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I like I said, it was a good weekend. Good sports weekend. Anything else wrestling you want to hit on?
No, sir.
Okay. Other big thing that happened this weekend, of course, was Penn State hockey. Not just beating Michigan, but even in that overtime game, kind of dominating Michigan at a time when they absolutely needed 2 wins. In continuing what is now a long-standing, at least 5-episode streak of us talking about Penn State hockey because they're worthy of it. I think the JJ Weebush goal. First off, my reaction to that prompted my wife to make sure that I was okay, even just because I was stunned to see it happen on a hat trick, to see it happen in overtime, to see it happen in Yost, which is just incredible stuff. I really think that's. I was trying to think about the best goals in program history, and that's up there for me. I think there was the one in the Big Ten tournament. Not there was a pretty big one in the one Big Ten tournament that they won, and then of course the Zach Czar goal as well, the first ever Big Ten tournament game ever, I believe. I think that was impressive, and I think for them to kind of play Guy Gadowski's style of hockey, like that was like, what if you were like, explain to me what Guy Gadowski's style of hockey is, I would show them game 2, because that's exactly what I watched in that effort. And I think that was just a massive weekend and maybe a massive exorcism of some demons, if you will, just because they've been haunted at Yost. I think the expectation I think you have to I think it's reasonable to have an expectation that they should reach the Big Ten finals or they can reach the Big Ten finals. And I think they should or can win it as well with how they're playing, how confident they look. I don't know that I've ever seen a Guy Gadowski team come together as a true team from top to bottom, goaltender to top forward and Aiden Fink, the way we've seen this team come together. One of the most impressive weekends for Penn State hockey ever. And then we can briefly talk about the women's team as well, going to their NCAA tournament game on Thursday night.
Yeah, and I thought your piece about from the goal and then talking about the men's program and the women's program is great reading. So if you haven't read it yet and you're here and listen to us, go back and read that. For the men, Coach Gadowski is, I don't know, like a romantic about hockey in some ways, right? He believes that the group will be better than the best star players, and if we're all playing for each other, and that's happening right now. Like it is. And I asked him earlier this week about, what was there a moment? He's like, no, there's not a moment. And the thing is, he said, it's just so fragile. Like it's just so, it can be so elusive. It's when it's happening, you just kind of got to enjoy it. So, and they've been giving people a lot to enjoy. I mean, they've been really playing well. I mean, the 2 wins this past at Michigan, where they've only had 5 all time at Yost. They were like 5-16, and now they got 2 wins. Then they go to Ohio State. They can beat Ohio State out there. They lost the first 2 games to them this season, but they got a win and a tie in the second two. So yeah, and I think they have a 98% chance to be in the tournament at this point, which feels like they're almost in. Although he didn't, he was like, well, just remember, a couple seasons ago, Minnesota was like 100% in.
That's
then
true.
they come to our place and we sweep them at the end of the season, and then we sweep them in the playoffs, and they don't even make the tournament. He said, so I'm not going there yet, but yeah, good for them, and it's good, fun, entertaining hockey. They're playing well. They're doing good things. It's and they have the spotlight, the attention to themselves at this time of year for the first times ever, because there's no basketball, men's or women's, at Penn State happening. So there's a chance for a little more attention for them this time.
I have not. I had a line in that article you're talking about that, and I have not sat down and wrote my basketball wrap up yet. But it does feel like people were searching for a void in terms of the winter sports calendar, maybe particularly how the football season ended in Hungary for something, and I think hockey in a lot of ways has answered that. For the men, I think if we want to talk briefly about the pairwise, so the CHN has them at a 98%. If you kind of look at where they are, they're, I believe, 11th. They're in the pairwise, maybe 12th. But all of the teams that would necessarily like steal a bid for them are behind them, which is where you want to be. You don't want to necessarily be in the mix with them in any shape or fashion. I think what you're collectively rooting for, if you would like to book your tickets to Allentown, is either A, for Penn State to win the Big Ten championship, which I think is a reasonable expectation or a reasonable thing that could happen now. I think that's option one. Option two is you are hoping that nobody from the Hockey East steals a bid. You are and when I say that, that's anybody outside of the top 16 pairwise. That would kind of be one shot that would push them out. And then the other one that is like the absolute chaos theory, you are actually hoping that Notre Dame does not steal a bid, who is the 7th team in the Big Ten. But basically, as long as either of those two things don't happen, they're in. And I think even with a loss against Ohio State, they should be fine because of how close those two teams are in the pairwise as well. I'm interested to see if Penn State beats Ohio State, do they jump Ohio State? Because it probably is pretty tight just based off of all of the varying factors that go into that. That would be this week's pairwise minute, I guess.
There you go. Well done.
Thank you.
And yeah, man, if Notre Dame somehow gets together and plays for their coach, that could be interesting.
Yeah, and that was.
But they didn't during the regular season. It feels, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe this past weekend was the thing, but who knows?
And maybe Minnesota was just deflated that they had to, like, maybe that Penn State series took a lot out of Minnesota, and they were deflated that they had to kind of play hockey again when they thought they were getting a bye and only having to play at most 2 more games until the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I think we should briefly talk about the women's team as well. They won their 3rd straight conference championship, which is sort of a AHA championship, it is an AHA championship, which is sort of 3 straight AHA championships, but it didn't exist 2 years ago, so that's why. I think again they are, and I've said this on here before, what Jeff Campersall has done with that team, between some of the players that they have, between Tessa Janicki and everybody else on the roster, quietly the best story, or one of the best stories in Penn State sports right now, and not getting any or enough attention that they should be getting. And I think this tournament could propel them to get people more on the wider radar. I would be stunned. I would be interested to know the number of people that even know Penn State has a Division I women's hockey program. I think a lot of people know they have a men's program, but I don't know that a lot of people know that they have a women's program as well. And I think beating St. Lawrence this week, which is a matchup of a 1-0 overtime game from last year in the NCAA tournament, I think even maybe giving Ohio State, if they would beat them, a run, which would be a regional final and then would put them in the Frozen Four. I think that gets a lot more people's attention. And I think if you aren't paying attention to them, start paying attention to them, would be my advocacy of the day.
Yeah, and the foundation is really strong because of the success. And I mean, it was just a couple of years ago they hosted Frozen Four, right? So it's I think a core of people know, but probably not as many people know, and especially in relation to the level of success they're having, and the cost it requires to support them, which is minimal. Like go out and check out a game. So not at this point, but yes, I think more people need to know, and they deserve the attention and respect they are getting, and probably deserve a little more on top of that.
Yeah, a big weekend in Columbus for Penn State's hockey programs. So yeah. This week's Old Guy Young Guy brought to you by your travels. Have you seen the news, Steve? Have you seen the big news that everybody's up in arms about today?
That wasn't the first thing we talked about?
Well, in the travel world, have you seen?
Is it the Southwest baggage fee?
It is the Southwest baggage fee.
Yeah, I saw a tweet somebody ticked off, and so go ahead, tell me the news.
So you will now have to pay to check a bag on Southwest, which everybody says that they can get really cheap flights on Southwest. We struggle with finding them, the cheap ones, but I digress. Here's my question. You are on a trip right now. You just went on another trip recently. Do you check a bag, Steve Stamsel?
No, not if I don't have to. We did Europe for 2 weeks, and we checked a bag shared that time. I can do a week solid, more than a week if I don't have to put my laptop in my backpack, but I usually bring it. We can do a week plus solid with a backpack and a carry-on, like in a small. I mean, not like the carry-on that doesn't fit in the thing that they need to enforce more often, I think. But like the well, I'm sorry, there are people with some carry-ons that are actually larger. So no, I don't. Do you guys? Do you?
No. The only time, although the last time I flew, I did check a bag, but it was because we got the slightly more expensive seats on Spirit, which is different. The rolls are different when you're flying Spirit.
Oh yeah.
Which that was to the Orange Bowl, which did allow me to take an Arnold Palmer and check the Arnold Palmer as well. No, I'm right there. We both of our most recent Europe trips we have done on a carry-on and a backpack. I guess then the second question is, did the father of two daughters force his daughters to check a bag?
One of my daughters could survive on a backpack and a roll carry-on. The other one would pack half the house. So I think when we traveled with the kids, we would check bags for them, and then we were in as much as a hurry when we were traveling with them. So then going to baggage claim to get it and whatever else. And I don't know that we're in a hurry, but it's just one more thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if we're doing basically direct flights domestically, being able to get on and get off with your carry-on in the backpack is just easy and more efficient. But yeah, when the kids were traveling with us, there was probably always check bags. Okay. We weren't as smart then either. And it's harder to be light when there's 4 of you as opposed to 2 of you.
Okay, that's fair. I was curious about that. All right, so you're upset about the fact that do you fly Southwest a lot? Because I feel like you do.
We do. Well, Southwest is the Nashville
connection,
and we have the credit card right to get miles. So no, because I'm not going to have to check a bag. I mean, in my world. Mm-hmm. Now, and I will give in sooner than Susan when they give you hey, we've got a full flight, we'll check it for free.
Of course you will.
If we're going home, not if we're going there. If we're going there, but if we're going home and my bag doesn't get it, okay, so what? We'll go home, we'll get it back at some point. So yes, I am an early adopter on that, just because it's one less thing. I don't want to fight for overhead space. I don't want to do it. If it's full and we're in the C section and we know we're not going to be having space, then go ahead and take my bag, gate check it, and I'll still play that game if it sometimes, but not if we're going someplace I want to be. Like if we're going, to Nashville, I don't want to not have stuff.
I was just curious. Yeah, I didn't. I knew you flew Southwest. You're one of the more frequent Southwest flyers that I know, just because of going to Nashville. I feel like Nashville. I mean, I don't know if they have a hub there, but I
think they do.
I know that that's pretty easy and common to go there. Okay, that's this week's podcast. We cover everything. Good.
We got you covered, from sponsors on the things behind Darian. Hey, if you want to give us, if you're a sponsor, we'll put your sponsor on our hard case bags that we travel with, so people see them all over the country too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it depends on what it is. We would vet the sponsor, much like Pack Rat vets the sponsor.
Okay.
Yeah, that was interesting. A little tidbit there was like, you have to go through a lot of paperwork when you want to give a big donation, which I didn't really think about, but it makes sense when you're giving a lot of money.
No, I'm sure. And I'm sure they're hoping the company doesn't get taken over by some other company whose name they don't like or whose business model they don't like,
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that either. Anyways, that's enough stadium talk. That's enough travel talk. That's enough wrestling talk. We will probably definitely talk about wrestling next week, though, because next week's a big wrestling weekend. And then I think we can also talk about the tournament a little bit, because we're not going to have any Penn State basketball to talk about, that's for sure.
That's true. So that'd be great.
So, but we can at least talk about the tournament and expectations there. I don't have any other major thoughts.
Don't forget to vote. Nominate.
Oh, yes, that was. I wrote that down. You reminded me to write that down. That is the other thing coming next week. We will unveil our ballot, I think will be the best way to say that. We'll get the list down to 30 people that we and you all believe are worthy of being in the first Penn State Hall of Fame class. You will vote on those up to 15. And I forget, I think I got to double check the number. A certain number, we're capping the number of football people, just because right now there are presently 31 or 30 other sports teams on campus, and just a lot of other people that aren't even necessarily administrators or people that could be in, that should be in, type thing like that. So we'll do that. We'll have that next week. So get on the website and vote. The website is called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With Steve. He's a little.
Sorry.
He forgot his name.
I was looking for
He's
some
on
wrestling
vacation
stuff.
mode, people. He is on vacation mode. My email is Darian@stuffsummersays.com. Steve says
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
There we go. That's a little bit better. 5 stars, thumbs up, YouTube, subscribe to that. All that other stuff. You can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says. You can find Steve
At Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.